Good evening, everybody. Jurors in President Trump's New York trial are set to begin their deliberations. The Marxist judge, Juan Merchant, telling the jurors, quote, "It's not my responsibility to judge the evidence here, it's yours." But Merchant has already placed his thumb on the scales of justice, of course. According to ex-Trump White House attorney Ty Cobb, the jury instructions practically compel a conviction. Cobb told Semaphore, quote, "The jury instructions, as urged by the district attorney and adopted by the judge over strenuous and well-founded defense objections, virtually require conviction," end quote. Merchant can front and pose all he wants. Americans see his hate and his corruption throughout the Soviet-style trial that he has staged in New York over the past 6 weeks. Joe Biden obviously hopes for President Trump's conviction because he thinks that will save him November 5th. But virtually every survey shows Joe Biden's re-election prospects are plummeting, while President Trump's are rising despite everything. In Virginia, new Roanoke College poll shows Biden and Trump tied. Democratic presidential nominees have carried Virginia in the past 4 elections. So this poll is a 5-alarm fire for Joe Biden and the Marxist Dems who are depending upon him to get them through November 5th. Meanwhile, Biden's lead over President Trump in New York has shrunk to only 9 points. President Trump is essentially pounding on the gates of a Democratic stronghold as Biden is cowering behind the walls, hoping that his pawns, like the corrupt Merchant and Alvin Bragg, will save him. No wonder the majority of Democratic voters now want Biden replaced on the ticket with someone else. A new Rasmussen Report survey found that 54% of Democrats want Biden replaced with someone else, and at this point, the Democrats couldn't cook a good poll for Biden if they tried, and they are trying. Americans want Joe gone. Biden is such a non-entity and such a threat, really, to this great republic that the Democratic National Committee plans to nominate him and Kamala Harris virtually, not in person. Nothing about the Democratic Party these days is real, not even their nominating process. They're skipping the usual in-person ceremony, partly to ensure that Biden and Kamala don't miss the Ohio ballot certification deadline. It is also another thing that Joe Biden has screwed up, but also because Joe is so deeply unpopular that all the pomp and circumstance won't be missed by many. The Marxist Dems are riding with Biden into the dustbin, and they know it. The end of the Biden regime would mean a return to law and order, to liberty and justice for people like ex-Trump attorney John Eastman. Those are not abstract concepts for Eastman. The Marxist Dems have made Eastman's life a nightmare for working with President Trump on the 2020 election campaign and election. They want him disbarred, bankrupted, and imprisoned. But Eastman is a fighter, and we're happy to have him with us here tonight. John, thanks for joining us. And as always, we appreciate your time. This trial, we're finally there. It's in front of the jury. They're deliberating. And what are your thoughts about, first, the trial to this point, the judge, and the prosecutors?
Well, this is an extraordinary case. It never should have been brought. They altered statute of limitations in order to bring it. They tried to squeeze square pegs through round holes left and right to create a campaign finance violation as an underlying crime that turns these misdemeanors into felonies, even though the Federal Election Commission officials that are responsible for looking at campaign finance violations didn't think there was anything to this case. The Department of Justice declined. This prosecutor's predecessors declined. This is clearly political. And I often take the language on the top of the Supreme Court building at the entrance: equal justice under law. The things that President Trump is being falsely accused of doing, which is misrepresenting a payment as a legal expense, is something that Hillary Clinton actually did. She laundered hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars through her law firm, called them legal expenses or legal fees, when what they were doing was hiring foreign agents as opposition research to create a false narrative about Russia collusion that ended up leading to warrants to spy on the opposing political campaign, one of the biggest political scandals in our nation's history. For that, she wasn't criminally prosecuted. She got a small, actually a decent size fine, but a fine from the Federal Election Commission. So there's no equal justice under the law here. The people that actually committed crimes are let off relatively free. Then people that didn't commit any crimes are being prosecuted, not just to the full extent of the law, but beyond the full extent of the law.
And President Trump, meanwhile, is saying that not even Mother Teresa could overcome these charges by the Marxist Dems, the George Soros-sponsored Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA, of course, Colangelo, the number 3 guy at Justice. By the way, what I've watched, how he got to be number 3 at Justice is beyond me. But nonetheless, they were happy to have him in Bragg's team to persecute the president. And Judge Merchant, my Lord, there's no place for subtlety in his courtroom. The man has just smashed any concept of impartial judgment from the bench. Your reaction to all of this?
Well, I met Seth Dillon, the founder and president of the Babylon Bee, a while back, and he said it's getting increasingly difficult to do parody of what the left is doing. But his report out this morning, I thought was pretty good. The judge ordered the jury to find a conviction, and whether they agreed or not. That's parody, but not far removed from the truth of what we're observing in this courtroom.
So close to the truth.
Yeah, the gag orders, the fact that the judge's daughter is making lots of money representing clients that are benefiting from this trial. I mean, these things, one can hardly imagine them ever happening in the United States, and here they are on full display for us.
And the family makes a living off of the Marxist Dem Party and fundraising by the tens of millions of dollars. The judge is a donor to the Biden campaign. It is outrageous to sit here and think this man is running a courtroom. He's exploded at the Trump attorneys. He has done so in front of the jury. His ignorance is just palpable. And to me, I haven't seen any sign that he's in the slightest embarrassed by any of his ignorance and ridiculous display from the bench.
Well, Lou, this is, I think, the biggest danger here. Whatever happens in this trial, the fact that the other side is willing to throw over any notion of the rule of law in order to achieve an outcome that benefits them politically is a grave danger. Look, Robert Jackson, former Attorney General, later Supreme Court Justice, headed up the Nuremberg trials after the defeat of Nazi Germany, warned prosecutors from just this very thing. Said, you will be tempted to abuse your powers of a prosecutor office to target people you don't like and find something that you can pin on them rather than looking at crimes and trying to decide whether you've got a case. We are seeing Robert Jackson's foreshadowing and warning play out in real time before us. One of the lawyers on my team, Harvey Silverglate, 15 years ago, published a book called 3 Felonies a Day. And the basic premise of the book is the government has so many laws that are vague, that can be distorted, that they can go after any one of us for anything they want just because they don't like us. This is Soviet-style tactics. The famous Lavrentiy Beria, the head of Stalin's secret police, said, "Show me the man and I'll show you the crime." What he meant was, I can go after anybody I want. Whatever the law is, I will find a way to go after anybody I want. And what we're seeing in real time is that being now played out in the United States of America. It's stunning. And the fact that this hasn't been shut down long ago is beyond belief.
As we wrap up here, John, that's one of the stunning parts of this to me. I knew that the Marxist Dems were capable of, because they are so corrupt and they are arrogant, I knew what they were capable of. I thought there would be a countervailing influence of some kind within the legal profession itself, whether it came from the Justice Department itself, whether it came from lead attorney generals in the states, or whether it came from the Supreme Court of the United States, that someone would reach down into this cesspool of corruption that is the New York judiciary and say, this stops now. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen by leaders of corporate America. It didn't happen by leaders of academia. What we are witnessing is the acceptance of totalitarian rule in those courts. And I think there's going to be hell to pay for what's happened. Your concluding thoughts?
No, I think you're right. And, some of these courts may be waiting until it's all final and they'll fix it after the fact. But what they don't understand is that much of the harm here is in the process itself. Now, I credit President Trump for figuring out a way to make lemonade out of these lemons, by going to the South Bronx, by holding rallies in New York, in the heart of enemy territory, to put it in political terms. And he's having tremendous success. But the fact of the matter is he should not be being kept from the campaign trail in the way that this made up set of charges have kept him sitting in a courtroom instead of out campaigning and raising funds and meeting with voters and holding rallies and the kind of things that he's so good at. This is part of the design. The process is part of the punishment, and it's designed to affect the outcome of the next election. And if it was anybody on our side of the aisle doing this, there would be criminal charges already brought against us for interfering with the election. And yet these people seem to have believe that they're immune from this, and that poses an even greater risk to me. The fact that they are doing this so brazenly and with impunity indicates to me that they think the shoe is never going to be on the other foot.
And thanks to John Eastman. And again, if you want to help him and his defense fund, go to givesendgo.com/Eastman. Anything that you can give will be helpful, and I'm sure John appreciates it mightily. Again, that is givesendgo.com/Eastman. Congresswoman Elise Stefanik is going on the offense. Stefanik filing a complaint against Judge Juan Merchant, alleging he is essentially a Democratic Party political assassin. Stefanik said there is nothing random about the dyed-in-the-wool Democratic mercenary being appointed to oversee this case in court. And she, of course, is correct. And we turn now to a developing news story around Jack Smith's classified documents case against President Trump. Newly unsealed filings indicate that someone in Trump's orbit, his camp, is cooperating with, the special counsel. Independent journalist Julie Kelly suggested that it could be an attorney. She also noted that Biden's Justice Department tried everything it could to coerce, pressure people to cooperate against President Trump. These are the desperate and demonic tactics you can expect from a Marxist regime fighting to keep its stranglehold on America. There is no law that they will not bend or break to get their way in their pursuit of retaining power. That's what these Trump trials are all about. And joining us now is someone who knows the ins and outs of the legal system, criminal defense attorney, former federal prosecutor, and Trump surrogate, David Gelman. David, great to have you with us. And the jury is asked already for some recitation of the evidence. Your thoughts about what that might mean?
Hey, Lou, thanks for having me. You know what? I'm not surprised. They're going to have a lot of questions when it comes to this because there's been so many witnesses that have come about from the prosecution. And remember, everything has been so convoluted. They have so many people that are saying all these different things and different with different details. Now, they asked about David Pecker right now, and they wanted to hear the testimony back. So I don't know what exactly they're looking to see. They're probably looking again to see what exactly this catch and kill scenario is that he was talking about. They might also be requesting to hear or wanted to hear again about how that happens and what President Trump did or other individuals who did this in the past. Remember Arnold Schwarzenegger. I want to say, was it Cy Stallone or another famous celebrity, or Hulk Hogan? I'm sorry. They were also part of the whole catch and kill scheme. So they probably were wondering how that works, wanted to hear again how that works and what impact it has. But also just remember, Pecker, he testified and other people testified that this whole catch and kill scheme, this wasn't anything to do about the election for Donald Trump. This was strictly Donald Trump using, money that he rightfully earned to keep it away from his family because he didn't want them to be embarrassed. Had nothing to do with the election. And I think that's a very big key here, Lou, because that is what the prosecution is trying to bank on, election interference, and they are election fraud. And there's no election fraud here whatsoever.
No. There's plenty of election interference, though, isn't there? I mean, they've kept him off the campaign trail for 6 weeks. To that point, Pecker's testimony, how important would you say it is overall within the context of this outrageous Soviet trial that they're putting the president through?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably give it a 4. Look, it all comes down to one person and one person only. Michael Cohen, the serial liar, the proverbial liar, the man who cannot tell the truth and who's never told the truth a day in his life. It comes down to his credibility, or lack thereof, I should say. Now, the prosecution yesterday in their closing arguments tried to, persuade the jury and make him look like he's this real upstanding individual. Well, the jury really heard from Michael Cohen through the defense that he's not an upstanding citizen. He's a disbarred attorney. He has been accused of perjury. He's been convicted of perjury, and he's a tax fraud. Oh, and also he's been referred to the DOJ for contempt of Congress. And to put the cherry on top, he stole from Donald Trump. But the prosecution wants you to think that's okay because he deserved it. If they're believing him, then it's a bad day, all right? And we all really need to go back and reassess everything we ever thought of.
Well, I know one thing, that this judge needs to reassess, this prosecutor needs to reassess, and they need to go to church and get down on their knees and pray for forgiveness, because this is an outrage against Donald Trump, his family, the American people, and the nation. I mean, we're watching what is an attempted overthrow of the United States and its election system. That's what this is all about. And why that can't be, was that expressed to the jury what this is really about? Because I didn't hear them say, the defense attorneys, this is what this is about.
Lou, they tried to, but here's the problem. You have the judge who's probably one of the most biased judges you will ever see, if not the most biased, because his daughter is a Democratic operative who's making millions and millions of dollars off of this exact trial. If you looked at the closing argument, just look at that. Don't look at anything else in the trial. See how the judge acts between the prosecution and the defense. The judge shut down the defense multiple times, but when it came to the prosecution, he let them pretty much say whatever they wanted. Any type of biases, any type of illegalities, any particular thing that the defense was not allowed to talk about, he allowed the prosecution. So that just alone shows the biasness of what's happening. So I don't think the defense could bring up that this is election interference because the judge is just not allowing it because he doesn't want anybody to actually know the real story here.
Incredible. So let's turn to that again, the question that the jury had about David Pecker, his testimony. Do you see that as a positive, a negative, or in neutral when it comes to the president's defense and the ultimate verdict?
I do look at it as a positive because when there are questions from the jury, it means that they're engaged. It means they're thinking. And I don't know which way they're thinking, but I could tell they're not just making this a check mark, if you will, a guilty or a not guilty, although it should be the not guilty aspect. but they're really, in my opinion, they're looking at this. They're really wanting to make sure they get this correct. I know the narrative here that look, we are in a blue city, i.e., Manhattan, and that there's
Right.
the jury. It's very difficult to get a non-biased jury, and I do agree with it. But in my experience, jurors are very they take jury selection and the jury process extremely seriously. I'm hoping that from my experiences as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney, that those experiences go towards this, and that these jurors are doing the exact same thing, that they are taking it seriously. So far, by asking a question, and it's been what, 3 hours, I guess, since they started
Right.
deliberating, and they probably had lunch in between. That's a good sign. I like that, and I expect there's going to be a lot more questions in the coming hours and days.
All right. We appreciate it. And David Gelman, you're terrific. I hope you'll come back and shepherd us through this week and shepherd us into a not guilty verdict across 34 counts. Let me ask you as we conclude here, 34 counts. Is anybody in the prosecutor's office? I mean, is there somebody who says you're idiots? How can you possibly do it? You've gone over the statute of limitations. You've created fictions from misdemeanors and twisted them into felonies. Is there anything more they could do that would be torturously crooked?
I mean, they really had to pull out every stop and make up the law to even get to this point. Remember, FEC, they didn't want to go for this. DOJ, they didn't want to go for this. Alvin Bragg didn't even want to go for this originally. He got bullied into doing it by former DAs who worked for him after they wrote a book. So nobody in their right mind thought this is a good idea. And then when they started getting their people in the stand, i.e., like Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels, that should have been just a nail in the coffin. But they're riding the wave, if you will, Lou, and they're hoping that the biasness from the judge, who pretty much is another prosecutor, and the people of Manhattan will convict Donald Trump. But the people are smarter than that, I'm hoping.
All right. David Gelman, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it and look forward to talking to you through the week. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Lou.
Turning now to other stories making headlines, the Biden administration wants hospitals to prioritize their organ transplants based on race. Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra says prioritizing kidney transplants this way would be a step toward uprooting what he called racial inequalities in the medical system. Now, the funny thing about these so-called anti-racist policies is that they always seem to institute a more vicious and blatant form of discrimination. Meanwhile, a federal judge in New Hampshire has ruled that state laws limiting classroom curriculum based on race and gender are unconstitutional. Federal Judge Paul Barbadaro says any attempt to prioritize education over indoctrination is forbidden. The judge should wear a clown suit instead of a gown. My suggestion. Let's see how he takes to that. In other news, Mike Lindell has another great deal and one you certainly don't want to miss. As you know, Mike has a passion to help you get the best sleep of your life. After he invented the world's best pillow, he created the famous Giza Dream Sheets. They are the best sheets you will ever sleep on. My wife and I have been sleeping on them for years. Your best night's sleep just got even better. For a limited time, you will get a queen size set for $59.98, king size just $10 more, the lowest prices in history. Mike and MyPillow employees continue to be canceled, of course, by those big box stores and attacked by the media. But they appreciate all of your great support during these times and want to thank you by giving you free shipping on your entire order today. To get the best specials ever, go to mypillow.com or call 800-977-9152. Use promo code Dobbs, that's DOBBS, and you get the famous Giza Dream Sheets, queen size for $59.98 and king size just $10 more. So call 800-977-9152 or go to mypillow.com, promo code, yes, Dobbs, DOBBS, to get free shipping on your entire order today. You'll be glad you did. And please join me for my podcast, The Great America Show, each day. The Biden administration has been forced to stop all aid deliveries to Gaza because the Biden regime's $300 million so-called floating pier is breaking apart in heavy seas and sinking. The military says they'll have it fixed, of course, but they don't say when. It lasted just about a week. It's typical Biden ineptitude spreading throughout the regime, the whole of government, if you will, including the U.S. military. It's unbelievable. $300 million for a pier? You've got to be kidding me. For our allies like Israel, Biden has been nothing less than an outright disaster. 3 Israeli soldiers were just killed in an ambush in Rafah. To date, 290 IDF soldiers have been killed since Israel started operating in Gaza after the October 7th massacres. Israeli national security officials say this war will likely last through the end of the year. But the Biden administration is already turning its back on Israel and has been for some time. America is alienating its allies under Biden. Biden is endangering American national security each and every day, something Rear Admiral Peter Brown is an expert on. He served as a Homeland Security advisor to President Trump, and he joins us now. Peter, good to have you with us. Thanks for joining us. Let's start with the Middle East. We watched, and I'm going to be very prosaic about this at the beginning. We're watching another inept metaphor delivered by the Biden administration as if they need more. But a $300 million pier system built specially for the Gaza aid falls apart with rough seas. I mean, how stupid can this administration look?
Yeah, it's they have really exceeded themselves with this one. President Biden and his administration, who I continue to refer to as Obama's JV team, because these are all recycled folks from Jake Sullivan, Anthony Blinken, and others. They have utterly failed, and what they've managed to do now is to, waste $333 billion US and a lot of military capability and effort to deliver aid at a cost of over $300 per pound just to get it to Gaza for it to be diverted, stolen, misappropriated by a terrorist organization, and that's what they've signed the U.S. up for. It's very sad to see.
It's sad to see, and it is also outrageous to see because those are taxpayer dollars. This pier was supposed to be priced at $100 million, and the next thing we know, it's over $300 million, and that's just the latest price that we've heard. It could be updated, as we know, under this regime, almost instantly in increments of $100 to $200 million. What is also interesting to me is that they were delivering aid into Gaza by truck. And could have done so, and they being the United Nations and the UN aid agencies and others. Suddenly they've got to have a $300 million pier. This is outrageous, and it's stupid thinking, and it's one of the reasons that we don't do well in recent conflicts. The leadership simply doesn't understand how you've got to fight against guerrillas and insurgents when you are the one bringing $100 million weapons to the fight, and they're fighting with $2 AK-47 rounds. It pervades the entire administration.
Yeah, the U.S. has been using exquisite and high-priced capabilities to accomplish things that could be done much less expensively, and the least expensive way to do an operation like this is to prevent the need to do it in the first place. And that's a place where this administration and the Obama administration before it have utterly failed. Their weakness invited not only Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthi, Yemeni attacks on Israel, but also invited the invasion of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin, and has encouraged China's saber rattling with regard to Taiwan. All of those are based on the weakness of these democratic administrations and their absolute obsession with the approval of Western Europe and the so-called rules-based international community. Like domestically, they believe in gun control, because if there's a law against guns, then nobody will have guns. That's their theory. They believe that international pressure will bring regimes like Russia, Iran, Hamas, Communist China to behave in ways that they're not willing to behave, and no amount of international pressure is going to do that. Only the strength to stand up to them, and Israel under the leadership of Benjamin Netanyahu, and the United States under the leadership of President Trump during his first term, were able to do that and prevent these conflicts.
Well, I say thank God for Benjamin Netanyahu, for the state of Israel, and for the United States, because without him, this administration would have run roughshod over Israel, insisted on a two-state solution within days of the October 7th massacres. This is a sickening, corrupt, weak, and destructive regime that the American people really have to understand is attempting to overthrow this government and overthrow our way of life. And it's getting more serious by the day. I want to turn, if I may, to Iran. We now know that the enriched uranium is now at levels 30 times that contemplated by the so-called deal that Obama made with Iran. We also know that they're very few days away from converting that enriched uranium into a weapon, as many as 3 weapons, over 200 pounds of enriched uranium now. What in the world is the United Nations doing? What in the world are the other agencies within the UN doing? They can't provide aid. They can't stop Ukraine and Russia. They can't stop the Hamas terrorism. What good is the United Nations in all of this?
The United Nations is doing very, very little, and I'm glad that you brought up Iran, because Iran really is the linchpin of the instability in the Middle East. People want to frame this conflict as between Israel and Hamas, which is and they tend to posit the Hamas, or the Palestinian people, as the David to Israel's Goliath. But in this case, Israel remains David. Israel's a nation a little bit larger than New Jersey, with a similar population of about 10 million, surrounded by 150 million Shia Muslim countries, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, who are constantly attacking them, both in the international bodies such as the UN, and militarily now with terrorist acts and other strikes. And to give an analogy that would Americans would fit and grasp, it would be as if 50 years after the formation of the United States, the entirety of the United States at that time united against New Jersey and had pledged to wipe out New Jersey, to wipe it off the face of the earth, and then began launching attacks from Philadelphia, from New York, from Maine, and from Maryland against New Jersey. And then we had a government, United Nations in the current analogy, or the federal government back then, that would deny New Jersey a right to defend itself. The United Nations is completely weak, and this is actually an area where China is a major problem, because China, as it influences economically countries to flip their recognition from Taiwan to Beijing, is accumulating favors and votes, not only in the UN General Assembly, but also in all of the working bodies of the United Nations, and has become, basically, those working bodies have become a tool for anti-American, anti-Israeli entities.
Admiral Peter Brown, we thank you very much for being with us. Thank you so much, Peter. He
Thank you,
served
Will.
as Homeland Security Advisor to President Trump and now serving this audience with his knowledge and insight. Thanks so much, Peter. Well, turning now to illegal aliens committing awful crimes in this country. An illegal alien kidnapped an underage girl in Louisiana and took her to Virginia, where police caught up with him. Police say the illegal alien took, quote, indecent liberties, end quote, with the girl, and he is in custody. In West Virginia, an illegal alien from El Salvador, charged with murdering a woman. This criminal alien was in prison for 20 years before entering the United States illegally, where Biden's catch and release policy freed him. The body of the woman he killed was found on a burning couch in the middle of a field. In Denver, the city government has created a how-to guide for crazed Marxist sanctuary cities that want to, for whatever their reasons, to welcome and accommodate illegal aliens while throwing away taxpayer dollars. The guide refers to illegal aliens as quote-unquote newcomers and provides best practices for serving up those city funds to help the illegals rather than their citizens. But in order to spoil illegal aliens, Denver has had to make huge budget cuts. As a result, the Denver Police Department is now using drones. Can you imagine? To help respond to 911 calls. Call the cops, get a drone. It's unbelievable. Presumably because they can no longer afford to pay or staff more cops to protect their citizens. They're too busy protecting the illegal aliens. So President Biden's big plan to invite in millions of illegal aliens has made Denver less safe, less clean, more crowded, and a mess. And the lefties there put together a nice little booklet on how other cities can bring joy to their cities as well as a sanctuary city. Very nice. Turning now to the political persecution of President Trump, Trump addressed the national media as the jury begins its deliberations in the New York sham trial, Soviet style. Here's what President Trump said.
Thank you very much. I would say, in listening to the charges from the judge, who's, as you know, very conflicted and corrupt, because of the confliction, very, very corrupt. Mother Teresa could not beat these charges. These charges are rigged. The whole thing is rigged. The whole country's a mess between the borders and fake elections, and you have a trial like this where the judge is so conflicted he can't breathe. He's got to do his job, and it's not for me, that I can tell you. It's a disgrace, and I mean that. Mother Teresa could not beat those charges, but we'll see. We'll see how we...
We'll see. President Trump is right. This is unbridled election interference by the Marxist Dems pretending to be a court case in New York. Ben Bergquam is on the ground right now in Manhattan. He's the host of Law and Border on Real America's Voice News and founder of Frontline America. Ben, great to have you with us. And tell us about the latest. The jury right now is, I'm told, moving into the courtroom to hear the answers to their questions. What have you got?
Yeah, we've got a couple people in the courtroom right now, Andrew Giuliani and David Zier. Apparently, President Trump had returned to the courtroom, and the jurors have some questions in particular about the interaction between David Pecker and that part of the testimony. So, for those that are watching that had to be here this entire time, that happened about 6 weeks ago at the beginning of the trial. So it's not surprising that they might have some questions, even though the prosecution did a 4.5-hour review yesterday. Apparently they needed some answers still.
You know, I don't know about you, but if I'm sitting on a jury and I've got some fool prosecutor talking to me like these guys have been talking for 4.5 hours, I wouldn't be too interested in their nonsense. I mean, that's too long, it seems to me, to expect anyone to pay attention. You're thinking.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've sat through hours of this trial in the courtroom, and it's nauseating. I mean, obviously from the perspective of somebody who sees it for what it is. It's a sad injustice that's happening. But beyond that, it's just incredibly boring. The prosecutors have been, I don't know if it's demeaning, but even the language they use is childish and it assumes you know nothing. And I guess in part they have to do that. But it is one of the most exhausting, boring things I've ever sat through. I sat through it again for several days and just thought, there's no way in hell I would ever be a trial lawyer if this is what it's like. But honestly, Lou, I think this is part of the strategy. It's not even about the outcome. Obviously, they want a guilty verdict. They want to be able to say President Trump is illegitimate, even though more than likely this thing will get tossed out in appeal. That doesn't matter. It's about being able to say, we found him guilty, he's illegitimate. And then the other side of that is the time suck, the 7 weeks of time suck that this has taken President, and then the weeks and months that President Trump and his team have had to plan for this, along with the other indictments. That's really what this is about.
And it's about a crazed Marxist judge who lives on the Marxist Dem candidates and their fundraising. I mean, we're talking about tens of millions for members of his family.
That's right.
It's outrageous. And here he is, leading this sham 3-ring circus, and he is the ringmaster of it all. The note from the jurors asking about David Pecker's testimony and a conversation with the president while he was in an investor meeting, Pecker's testimony about the decision not to finalize and fund the assignment of Karen McDougal's life rights, Pecker's testimony regarding a Trump Tower meeting, Michael Cohen's testimony regarding the Trump Tower meeting. This does not look to me like it's particularly germane, as I understand the case.
That's right.
You're thinking about the questions.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, I was in there for that testimony when David Pecker was testifying, and the entire Karen McDougal portion of the testimony was set up as this is not what's being tried, but it's basically to set the stage, if you will, for what's to come. So in reality, it has nothing to do with the charges. It has nothing to do with the so-called criminal acts. Now, the smorgasbord, you get to choose from 3 options. You may not agree on what the criminal acts were, but you can all be unanimous that there was some sort of criminal act. But Karen McDougal part of that has nothing to do with it. And so it is. It's just, again, it's just an absolute total time suck. Now, when you heard the prosecutors, they talked about it, said, well, we have to do this to show the precedents. We have to do this to show the pattern. But in reality, it has nothing to do with the charges.
Yeah, nothing to do with them. And unfortunate reality is that everybody has to put up with all of this. David Gelman was here, a legal surrogate for the president, a well-known former prosecutor, federal prosecutor, and defense attorney. He's saying he's really encouraged by the fact that they wanted to ask these questions this early and this broadly, because he says it shows engagement and that they're not just taking the prosecution at face value on anything. Your reaction to his perspective?
Well, I hope so. I mean, honestly, I'm twofold on that, because I think partly I would prefer that they wouldn't want more engagement into this other than to say this is a total sham. If I was in that jury pool, I would be immediately saying my vote is to acquit now, and I'm not going to change that vote. You can vote 3 times, but that's my vote. Now, again, from the pragmatic standpoint, most of the people in there probably aren't as political as I may be. And so, yes, maybe asking some of those questions are a good sign. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an expert when it comes to judicial review. And so me reading between the tea leaves, I don't know if that adds any value to it. But I'll say this. One thing we do know is the longer this deliberation goes on, more than likely, the better off it is for President Trump. The shorter it is, the expectation is, the worse it is for President Trump.
And we'll see how this all plays out. And we're well underway. Ben, thanks so much. Ben Berkram on Law and Border on Real America's Voice. Ben, thanks so much.
Thank you, sir.
President Trump, in a recent interview with Katz and Cosby's podcast, revealing that Joe Biden had requested their upcoming presidential debate be both without an audience and both debaters be sitting down.
We're all set up for a debate. And if he gets through the debate, they'll say it was brilliant. It was brilliant. She gets through the debate. But if he does, we have a debate. I hear now we're sitting at tables. I don't want to sit at a table. I said, no, let's stand. but they want to sit at a table. So we'll be sitting at a table as opposed to, doing it the way you should be, in my opinion, in a debate. You walk out to a podium and you stand for an hour and a half or 2 hours, but they have them sitting at a table. So that's not so good. I just heard that. That was another one of their many. But I agree to their request because I want to debate this. I want to debate them.
President Trump seems very eager to just get Biden to that debate stage no matter what he does. He's accepted some, disadvantageous terms. I want to get to our guest's take on all of this. Our guest is Roger Stone, top Republican strategist, longtime aide to President Trump, host of the Stone Zone podcast. And now here is Roger Stone. Roger, great to have you with us. Thanks for joining us. And I don't know where to start right now. There's so much going on, and it's all crazy. But I'm going to start with President Trump revealing on a podcast that the Biden White House asked him if the two debaters could sit down for that arduous confrontation. I mean, this gets worse and worse for this guy.
Well, look, President Trump has already accepted terms that I think are advantageous to Joe Biden. The idea that CNN can turn off President Trump's microphone while Joe Biden is speaking, frankly, interrupts President Trump's debate style. I'm interested in a debate back and forth. I'm not interested in one canned statement, then another canned statement, then another canned statement. We want to see these guys mix it up. That's what the American people want. That's a great American political tradition in this country. Politics ain't beanbag. And the President Trump is so anxious to get at Joe Biden and his miserable record that I think he has agreed to terms that are disadvantageous to him, right. Such as the one I just referred to, no studio audience. He has Jake Tapper and Dana Bash as the moderators. It means it's 3-on-1, Biden plus the two of them versus Donald Trump. And now Joe is so feeble, he can't even stand up through an entire debate. So I like the President Trump's suggestion, which is Joe Biden should be subjected to drug testing prior to the debate. Because if that State of the Union performance was any indicator, he sure looked hopped up on something to me.
Well, higher than a kite, however President Trump said it. He's right. I mean, I couldn't believe this man was the same fellow that we'd just seen for the 2 months previous. Suddenly he shows up there and he is bouncing off the walls, for crying out loud. There's no question he's on something when he has these brief moments of lucidity. Do you think?
I think it's, and you can kind of see him wind down. In other words, you can see what happens when whatever medication they have him on to keep him more alert begins to wear off. He begins to fade. I don't think this guy could do an hour-long debate, to tell you the truth. So we shall see as this goes forward. But I really think that Biden here was caught by surprise. He made this challenge confident that Trump would say no. Then he would have said, oh, well, I offered to debate, but Trump wouldn't do it. So the debate question's over. He would feel immune from an attack by President Trump that Biden refused to debate. Surprise. Trump is a brawler, and I don't care what the debate rules are. I think he'll come out on top in debate.
I couldn't agree more. As we're watching what is happening with this White House, the wheels are coming off. The visibility now into the corruption in this White House, in the Department of Justice, the FBI, it's been pretty vivid. But once you start authorizing deadly force for the FBI, its SWAT teams in a raid on the president's estate, Mar-a-Lago, you've just gotten to the point where the American people are going to tell you to go to hell, I believe.
Well, look, I'm not a former president, but Luz, I'm sure you remember on January 25th, 2019, I opened my front door looking down the barrel of 3 M4 fully automatic assault weapons pointed at my head by FBI agents. Completely unnecessary. For the first time, nonviolent alleged crime of lying to Congress. An absurdity. All they had to do, of course, was contact my lawyer, and I would have turned myself in and saved the taxpayers $1.1 million, which was the cost of the raid on my home. Also mentioned that my wife, who is virtually deaf without hearing aids, she woke up looking down the barrel of 2 assault weapons. She didn't know it was a home invasion. She had no idea what had transpired because, of course, she cannot hear. So this is not new for them. These are bully tactics, but very, very concerning. Now, President Trump was not in Florida at the time of the raid. Those who say, oh, this was a planned assassination attempt, I think that's taking it a bit far, but unnecessary to have the show of force or the authority to use deadly force when you're going in looking for documents. Makes you wonder, Lou, what document is it that they're concerned about? What document is it that Donald Trump had that they don't want the American people to see? That's the question I keep asking.
Yeah, and as do I. And actually, I've convinced myself they didn't get it in that raid, in the first raid, and that the president has whatever document it is they're seeking safely stashed somewhere. Your thoughts as we wrap up here?
I think you're absolutely right. Our problem today are not the screwball socialist Marxist Democrats. We know exactly where they're coming from. Our problem today are the gutless, feckless, weak-kneed, lily-livered, white wine swilling establishment Republicans who don't seem to have the courage to confront these issues. We have theoretically the purse strings, but there's no effort to impound funding for the Department of Justice or for Special Counsel Jack Smith. There's no appetite for that. There doesn't really seem to be an appetite to impeach Joe Biden, although there's more than enough evidence to do so today, far more evidence than was ever considered in the successful efforts to file articles of impeachment against Donald Trump, which took, as I recall, 6 whole days. Meanwhile, the Republicans continue to fritter and do nothing. It's really disheartening and disgraceful.
I concur. Absolutely. Roger, always great to talk with you, always informative and if I may use the word, fun. Thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it, and God bless you, Roger.
Thank you, Lou, and God bless you.
And turning now to a deal you don't want to miss, and you know Mike Lindell has a passion to help you get the best sleep of your life. After he invented the world's very best pillow, he created the famous Giza Dream Sheets. They are the best sheets you will ever sleep on. They are incredible. My wife and I have been sleeping on them for years. We guarantee you it is the best ever. Your best night's sleep, though, just got even better. For a limited time, you will get a queen-size set of Giza sheets for $59.98, king size just $10 more, and the lowest prices in history. Mike and MyPillow employees continue to be canceled by those big bad box stores and attacked by the Marxist media. They appreciate all of your great support, though, during these times, and they want to thank you by giving you free shipping on your entire order today. To get the best specials, please go to mypillow.com or call 800-977-9152, and please use promo code Dobbs, D-O-B-B-S. You get the famous Giza Dream Sheets, queen size for $59.98, king size just $10 more. So call 800-977-9152 or go to mypillow.com, promo code Dobbs, that's D-O-B-B-S, to get free shipping on your entire order today. You'll be glad you did. And join us for my podcast, The Great America Show. Thanks for being with us. Join us here tomorrow, 7 Eastern, 6 Central. And coming up right after this, the Lindell Report. You don't want to miss it. Thank you. Good night. God bless you. And God bless America.